family. Family is everything. Making sure that you're connected to the people that really God gave you. You know, you didn't choose your family members. For the most part, there you are, just plopped in this group of people who are your family. And every time I see a family that loves each other, they are encouraging of each other, they're lifting each other up, there's a healthy dynamic there. I just want to get to know them better. I want to know what makes them so connected and how God is working in their lives, and learn what I can learn from families with, you know, one generation that leads to the next generation, that leads to the next generation. And there's no more beautiful picture in our day and age than the family that I'm going to be talking to today. So stay tuned, you're not going to want to miss this. Glad that you're joining me today. I'm actually going to say welcome back. And the reason I'm saying welcome back is because this is part 2 of a conversation we've already been having. So tinker around there on YouTube, the little pictures you've got there on the side, and find part 1 of this conversation. It has been so fantastic. We've been talking to a family of women, one generation pouring into the next generation, pouring into the next generation, and the fruit of that type of investment in the people that you love the most. We're talking about family, and what better family to talk to us about that than these incredible people that the Lord has given a little bit of a unique platform, and they've used it for His glory. Would you all please help me to welcome back the women of Duck Dynasty? So glad that you are here again, joining me. Just go ahead and introduce yourself. You are?
I'm Sadie.
You are Sadie. You are how old now?
20.
Because see, folks watched you grow up.
They sure did.
So we can't believe you're 20 years old. And then you are?
I can't believe she's 20 years old either. That's crazy. I'm Corey.
Corey, and you're the mom of how many?
6.
Now, was this planned? Was any of the 6 kind of like, ooh, oops, here I am.
Planned by God,
Planned
but
by
not
God.
necessarily by us.
Okay.
No, so we have 3 biological and 3 that are adopted, and so God has blessed us immeasurably more than we asked or imagined, for sure.
Absolutely. And then, who's this lovely lady?
I'm Chris. I'm Corey's mom, and I can't believe she's her age.
Yeah.
And I can't believe Sadie's 20, and I have 3 children and 14 grandchildren.
Oh, my goodness. What a beautiful legacy that you have. We talk so much about, you know, your show and the things that people most know you for, but I really want to talk about this legacy that's sitting right here and what it means to be a woman that's pouring into another woman, that's intentional about pouring into her, and being a model for her. And we talked a lot about spiritual things. We're going to get into that too. I'm sure the conversation always is going to steer back toward that. But I mentioned in the last episode, just the genes, the DNA that's happening up here, the beauty that's in front of us. And Miss Chris, I'm just looking over at you. Do you tell people your age?
I do tell people my age.
How old are you?
I'm 64.
You are 64 years old, and you are all sorts of lovely.
Oh, thank you.
You are
Thank
a beautiful one. I met...
It's kind of hard to hide the age when you have grandchildren who are 22. Yeah. So, you know, people will start adding it up, and then you're just like, yeah, I'm just old.
We did start young, though. She got married at 18, and I got married at 18 as well. So we did start young. I had John Luke when I was almost 22, and you were 20 when you had me. Yeah. So, yeah.
That did not happen.
Because you're still single.
I'm still single. I'm living my life.
No pressure.
Right. No
That's
pressure.
Right.
Yeah,
Okay.
it's all right. Enjoy that. You
That's
just
right.
enjoy that. Yes.
That's right.
Okay, here's what I want to ask you. If you could look back and tell yourself something at this age to do differently or to navigate a little bit differently from your vantage point now, what would you tell yourself at this age?
At Corey's age?
At Corey's age.
Corey's age, that would be a tough one because I already had John Luke. I was already a grandmother at Corey's age. And that was just amazing. Just, you know, the love of the, you know, there's no red carpet event that will match having that first grandbaby, you know, so that was just awesome. But I think I would just tell myself at that age that it is time to relax and enjoy a little bit because you do go through those years of raising your children where, and I'm more like Sadie. Sadie and I have more of the fear gene, a little bit more, and I learned that in my young 20s, that to not be afraid. And as Corey said, my mother-in-law was her other grandmother that quoted scripture all the time. And she's not with us anymore, but we can hear in our heads her emphasizing that do not fear. You know, she just had such an emphasis. And so I did come to that point in my 20s to not be afraid. But I still had that natural inclination of, like Corey said, of fearing, am I saying the right things to the kids? Are they going to be okay? Am I, you know? And so then when you get to be, well, because my kids were out of high school then, and I had a new grandbaby, that was such a great time to just rest in that for a little bit and enjoy what you've done and be proud that your children are in college or get out on their own, and the grandbaby generation is starting. But at the time, there's a little bit of, wait, I'm not old enough to be a grandmother. Don't say that word, you know. But then just relax in it and just love every minute of it. And
so just enjoying some of the fruit of what you've done.
Yes.
And so now, what about you, Miss Corey? What would you look back and tell yourself at 20 years old? What would you think that Corey should have known, or you wish she would have done a little bit differently maybe in those early 20s? You were already married.
I was married.
So as a early married young lady, what would you tell yourself?
Oh, goodness. So I have been asked this question before, and one of the things that I always say is I would give up the shoulds, because I think as women, we put so many, like, I should be here, or I should be married by this time, or I should do this, or my husband should be doing this for me, or all of these shoulds that we have. It's really expectations that we put on ourselves, and if we just can kind of lay those down and say, like, okay, this is really what I should do. Love God and love my neighbor, you know, and everything else is going to work out. And there's a Mother Teresa quote that I love, and it says, God hasn't called me to be successful. He's called me to be faithful. And I just love that, because it just takes that burden off of you to be like, okay, I don't have to be successful. I just have to be faithful. I just have to wake up and just do it again and just like walk in his path. And then he can worry about all the rest of that. So I think, you know, just kind of laying that down, laying that shoulds, laying that, like, burden of expectations down, and just being faithful. Yeah.
What would you say to moms who are in the throes of raising young adult kids? Because I find that there's a lot of books, a lot of resources, a lot of advice when you've got toddlers. And then there's a lot of advice when you've got, you know, some preteens and some teenagers. But then all of a sudden when you get a 20-year-old, the advice sort of falls away, and you can't really navigate this child/adult that I'm trying to still mother. You got to still mother her, but in a way, you know, she's just moved away from home. She's got her own place, and it's kind of like, how do I still mother her, but at the same time let her be an adult?
I think it is really about that. It's just kind of like being there and just being available for the phone call and being real, you know, telling your mistakes and your problems and the things that you went through, and identifying with that, rather than being like, oh, like this was all perfect for me, you know, but actually telling the hard stuff and talking about the hard stuff. One thing that I just feel really fortunate that we do have with our children is we just talked a lot to our kids, and so they talk back, you know? But it takes that, like, you have to work at it. Some of our kids are better at it. Sadie's a talker. Like, she'll tell you everything. I mean, like,
she's a talker in text. Sometimes she'll send me a text, and I mean, it's like a book.
Sorry.
It's a book.
Sorry about that. She will tell you, and she'll tell you the hard things that she's going through, and it's good because you're able to speak into it. But some of our other kids aren't like that. Like, they're not.
Did you find a difference between your boys and your girls? Did your girls talk and your boys kind of didn't?
Yes.
What did you do with your boys to kind of get them? I'm asking because you know I got these.
Yeah.
And they just sort of look at me. I say, how was your day? And they go, great.
Yeah.
You know, there's like these little grunts, and I have to say, good morning, and they go, And I'm like, buddy, you're going to say actual good morning. Words are going to come out. How did you get your boys to sort of open up?
I think part of that, for me, I noticed it's like timing. It's like whenever they're there, then you got to be there. And sometimes, especially John Luke, he's the one, comes into the room at like 11 at night, and you're like,
oh, now
just about asleep, but now, and sits on the bed, and then you're like, okay, this is the moment, so I got to take it when it's there, you know, and I see that with our other boys too. It's like it might not be. You might have some time where it's a lot of grunts and a lot of this, and then all of a sudden, if you just stay there, you stay there and available, they'll come around, and whenever the time comes, they'll
You know, a little
up.
habit that I've had since the boys were little, and I learned this from Lisa Whelchel. Do y'all remember Lisa Whelchel? She played Blair on The Facts of Life. And she's a wonderful, wonderful lady, and we were talking one time about raising kids, and she said that she made it a habit to go and sit on the end of her kid's bed every night. She would just go sit there. And she said a lot of times she would just sit there in silence until she would say goodnight. But every now and then, if you just would sit there for 10 or 15 minutes, that they would ask a question. And that question would lead to a conversation. But you had to have enough patience and diligence to just show up and sit there. So I've been trying to do that. It was easier when they all three shared a room. Okay, I got to ask you, Sadie. You had a beautiful mother, a beautiful grandmother that both were married young, okay? I want to know how you have seemingly escaped the pressure that a lot of single women feel to have to do this thing, to have to go ahead and meet that guy and go ahead and get that ring and move on with the next season of life. I'm going to assume, you can correct me if I'm wrong, that wasn't just something you arrived at, that maybe you've kind of had to kind of work through that and realize this is going to be my own journey and it might not look the same as mom and dad. How are you doing that? Because single women are struggling with that today.
Yeah, for sure. That honestly was really hard for me. Actually, because they both got married at 18. John Luke got engaged at 18. My best friend got married at 18. Everybody's getting married at 18, and here comes 18, and I'm not even dating anybody, so this is not gonna happen for me, obviously. So I was like, and I know to most people that's like, sounds crazy, you're 18, you're so young, you know, but in the family I was raised in, that seemed to be the normal or what was supposed to happen. And I had dated people, but and I think I put that pressure, like, I have to marry them because I wanna get married young and I want this life. But if I would have done that, where I am now would have never happened. But what really convicted me, actually when I was 18, to just be still and know that he is God, is actually whenever I reread the story of Jacob and Rachel, is that, yes. And I remember this particular day because I was really stressed out about it and I was really sad about it. And I just realized the timing of God, and when that happens, you know, everybody now talks, it's like, whenever you like lock guys and you know this moment's the person. And to me, I realized that it's gonna be the timing of God, and I'm gonna have to be still, then I'm gonna know that it's God that brought this person, and it's gonna come whenever I'm doing the work of him on my path that he has for me, and then that person's gonna come alongside of me. And reading that in the Bible and recognizing that story is not just a story for show, and that's like, oh, that's a great story, but that's a story for me to walk out and wait and understand that the same God that set up that divine relationship is the same God that's gotta come in for me.
Come on and preach, Sadie. Come on, girl.
Like, to me, it really got me. It really did. And because I was really stressed out and I was really sad about it because I really was like, I wanted to do that too. But I was like, that's just not gonna happen. But God, your ways are higher than my own. And I remember reading that out loud to myself, preaching what I just said to myself. I think that's what comes from a real place because I really had to say it with that much authority to me to believe it. And now, me and my best friend, both of my best friends, we both live in a house together, and it's so fun. We just talk about, you know, that we all felt that pressure, but thank God we're here because this is such a fun season of life.
Season.
And like, gosh, we just get to enjoy each other's friendship and living together as roommates, and it's just fun. And so we're glad we're not missing that, being sad about not having that, you know?
That is so good. Cool. That right there is the definition of contentment.
Yeah.
It is just being okay with where I am now. It doesn't mean you don't have hopes for the future.
Yeah.
It means that there's an equilibrium. There's a balance between what you have now and enjoying that while still looking forward and toward what you have in the future.
So true.
And the hard thing for us as women, I think, because this is something I've had to really work through in my own life, is that we're so busy looking toward the next thing.
Yeah.
When the winds blow and the seasons change, which they always do, then you're in another season and you may never return to the one you left.
Yeah.
And that's when we look back and go, oh my goodness, there were a whole lot of blessings there that I never even recognized or took advantage of.
Yeah.
And a lot of what we needed to sustain us in the next season, we never received because we weren't fully present when we were there.
Yeah.
Fully present in our singleness, fully present with the young adult kids,
Right.
fully present as a grandmother, like you said. there are a lot of grandmothers who are struggling just to be called grandma. They don't want to be called grandma. They want just something else that doesn't quite sound like they're a grandmother because they're not ready for that yet, you know? But just settling into that season of life. So I want to ask you about health and wellness, because you are three very lovely ladies, and you know, I think a lot of times we see women who really look good, you know, in different stages of their life. They really look good, and we think it's just, you know, they just arrive like that, like there's no struggle in that. They didn't have to be intentional with that, and of course genes and genetic has a lot to do with it. But you know, when you're 20, health and wellness looks different than when you're in your 40s or 50s, and when you're in your 60s, it looks completely different. And so I'm just kind of curious about each of you and how you've had to take care of yourself differently at this age than you did maybe a decade earlier, and what that's looked like for you just navigating being a woman at the stage of life that you're in. You want to start? Because I'm really want to know.
Yeah, right.
I love athletics, and I've always done some sport. I've moved to tennis. I started playing tennis when I was in my early 40s, and so that is the thing that I love to do. Now, because of Duck Dynasty, that season of our time, it was kind of put on the back burner. Corey and I were partners and had so much fun playing together, and we haven't been able to do that, but I still continue to play. But I do remember when I was younger and I would go to the gym and work out or go to an exercise class, I always felt like it was a special thing that I got to do if I got to do that. You know, that was just like a little extra in my day. But now in my 60s, I make sure I exercise. It's not extra, it's a requirement for me, because I want to stay young and be able to come up here and see Sadie, or fly with her to California if she's on Dancing with the Stars, or go to see John Luke, or my other 12 grandchildren who are all involved in sports and different things. I want to stay healthy for that. So I do exercise almost every day now on some level. I don't go to the gym. I just do things at the house, and I play tennis.
Let me tell you what she does. She's not fancy about it. She's
tell
in
us.
her pajamas, in her bedroom, on her rug, doing like leg lifts, push-ups. She gets the cans in the kitchen. She's that kind of exerciser. She wouldn't go and spend an hour at the gym. She literally is in her pajamas. You come over to her house at night, and you're like, "Hey, Mama, where are you, Mom?" And she's back there on her hands and knees doing leg lifts. You know, that kind of thing.
That's so great, though.
Candace Cameron, 50 push-ups a day challenge.
She's doing that.
So I'm doing the 50 push-ups a day. Now, mine don't look like Candace's, but they're going up and down nonetheless. They're like little, but they are going up and down. So I am all about just making available what you have available and the time that you have to put into it, whether you get yoga on your phone. There's so many resources now that you don't have to go to a gym. You can do it around the house. And like I said, we live next door, but it's a pretty good hike over there. And so walking and staying, just trying to stay active and playing tennis when Sadie comes, playing tennis with her.
And what are you eating? Well, or what are you not eating, I should ask?
That is just not a real good question for me.
It's not?
I'm not a big eater anyway. And
she eats those little those little Andes mints, like that's a candy bar for her. She's like it takes her like 5 bites to eat that. Yeah. I'm eating like a Snickers. I'm like the movie size Snickers, and she's like the Andes mint.
I really have always not been much of an eater. All of my growing up years, my dad was very thin. I take just after my daddy. He was tall and thin, and that's just how I have always been. But being tall and thin does not mean you're healthy.
Right.
So, and it doesn't mean you're in good shape. It doesn't mean you can stand up to a 3-hour tennis match when your granddaughter comes. So you still have to eat right. My husband had colon cancer 20 years ago, and we stopped eating meat on the spot. And so we don't eat meat, and we eat vegetables and fish. And since we're in Louisiana, there's plenty of fish. So our diet is fish and vegetables and things like that, and a little Andes.
That's awesome.
Yes.
And then I didn't ask you your age earlier, Miss Corey. Do you tell your age?
I will tell it. Of course, I'm 44.
Okay.
Yes.
44. We're about the same age.
And I actually signed up for a half marathon this
That's
year.
right.
Okay.
Yes. So I am not like Mom. I'm not consistent. I've never been a consistent exerciser. I'm kind of like one of those. I'm like, oh, I'm going to sign up for
Can I
this.
tell them the story?
And I do it. What story?
This is funny. So my mom, we call her the 8th wonder of the world because it's really just a wonder how she looks so good. Because she hasn't ever really like worked out and stuff. But she
doesn't
would
really
always
work
say,
out.
she would say, one of these days, I'm gonna be a runner. And we would laugh because we're like, you
They
don't
make fun
just
of
like
me.
all of a sudden wake up and like, I'm gonna be a runner.
Yeah.
She's like, nope, I'm telling you it's gonna happen. I've read stories, I've seen TV shows. And she's like, all these people, they just wake up and they're just like, I'm gonna run, and then they love it. And my dad's always made fun of her. Come her birthday this year, she wakes up, she's like, my time is now. She signs up for a half marathon, and she's been getting after it.
been running.
Like,
I
can happen.
ran 4 miles for the first time, and I was like so proud of
Wait a minute.
myself.
The first time you went out to run, you
No,
ran
no, no.
Oh.
For the first time, like the other day, like I'm building
it's been a
up. No, this has been a process,
Okay.
about a couple of months process, and so
All
I'm
right, I was
building
about to
up.
meet your whole family.
No, 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 no.
It's a
The first time
process.
I ran for 2 minutes, and I was like, oh gosh, what am I doing? But I'm
She's
kind
so
of
good.
the kind that like I have to have something hard. Like I need to plan the party to like clean the house. So like I'm like I
true.
have to like plan the party, and it makes
Yeah.
me do it.
Yeah.
So we went to Peru this summer. We do a lot of work with an organization called Help One Now that I'm on the board with, and we travel with them and do work around the world. We were in Peru, and we climbed Machu Picchu. And I was like dying. But there's a picture at the end of our whole group, and we're standing at the bottom, and I am like standing like so proud. And I like looked at myself because I was standing so proud, and I was like, look, like I'm so proud of myself that I did that. So I was like, it just kind of like hit me like, I need to do something hard. I need to do something that's hard for me. And like sometimes we can get in that moment of just we're comfortable and we don't do anything that's hard for us, and we don't do anything that we don't think we can do. And a half marathon, really, I did not feel like I could do it whenever I said I'm going to do this. But sometimes we have to just kind of push ourselves out there and say like, okay, I'm going to do something that's hard, that makes me uncomfortable, that scares us a little bit, and get out of our comfort zone and see what God can do with it.
Have you found that your body has changed from 30s into 40s?
Oh, good night. Yes, yes. And Willie is, he's hilarious, and I do laugh at myself. So he comes up and does this little thing where he like
Under the
shakes
arm.
the bottom back of my arm.
He's
Like,
done that to
"Thank
me
you."
since I was, because he grew up in our youth group, and
Yeah.
literally he was doing that to me when I was like 28.
school,
I'm
he
like,
comes
I'm
up and just, like,
28. I'm like,
shakes
I'm
the back
okay.
of your arm, and you're like, thank you for that reminder. But
My boys are doing that to me now. Just tucking me in my arm.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly.
So funny.
But yes, it has definitely changed. And the things where I have never been a really consistent, like I play tennis, I like it, or I might, I'll do yoga for 3 months and then I'm off it, or I do, I just have never been have anything that I'm real consistent with. And so I decided it was going to be running, and this is my year.
So you're doing it. You're
I'm doing
currently
it.
doing
I'm
it.
currently
You're up to
doing
4
it.
miles.
I'm up
Great.
to 4 miles, and in a few more months.
Do you have to watch your eating, or are you kind of like your mom? No, you already said you want the whole Snickers. The
Yeah,
whole.
But
I
she's
ate it all.
She does eat.
Yeah. No, Willie's a really good cook. Willie's a really good cook, and so
Well, the
we eat
backstory
good.
too on Corey, though, like she is my reader, and I am Sadie. So growing up, I was Corey. Let's go outside and play. Let's jump on the trampoline, whatever. Corey was,
She'd be reading the books.
she's my reader, and so she did play softball, and she did learn how to play tennis, but she claims it's only because I was her mother driven to get her out there because, I wanted her to play with me, to come outside and play with me. But she is the reader, but she's also salutatorian of her class. I have to do some bragging. So when she says she's going to stick to something, she
gonna do it.
will stick to it.
gonna do
So
it.
I fully expect to be passing water out to her at the marathon in a few months.
Are you all enjoying the aging process? So many people fight it, particularly in this western part of the world where we're just supposed to look a certain way for as long as we possibly can. It's hard to be in this culture and just go ahead and relax into the changes in a woman's body and her health and hormones, all the stuff that happens with women in our bodies. Are you guys relaxing into that, or are you finding yourself a little bit with a little anxiety over the changes as you age?
I think that you don't relax into the health parts of it. I mean, you don't want, you know, anytime that there's something health related and the doctor says, well, I think it's age related, I'm like, don't say that. Surely somebody young has this problem, you know. But so you kind of I fight that a little bit. But again, I will go to my mother. My mother is such a amazing woman.
How old's your mom?
She'll be 87 next month, and you would not know it at all. And she has modeled for us how to age gracefully. And I had on a cape yesterday, and Sadie said, wow, you look like Mama Jo today, because Mama, I mean, she looks like a movie star if she's going to the grocery store, you know. My brother, who lives next door to her, went over the other day and she hadn't put on her makeup, and she was like, honey, I can't believe I don't have my makeup on. And from that day, this is like a few weeks ago, from that, I went over later after that and she had her makeup on. And I said, Mom, you're already all dressed. And she said, honey, I made a deal with myself. I'm never going past 8 o'clock without my makeup on.
87 years
At 87. She just retired.
But and also, she's at all of our kids' basketball games, climbing the bleachers, just like, you know, all of us. And if you try to help her up those bleachers, you will,
No, honey.
She's gonna, and part of that is, it serves her well, because that stubbornness is like, nope, I'm gonna do this, I can do this. And
I think
that's where I am as far as aging. Now, don't get me wrong, I'm gonna cover the gray, you know. I got a little bit showing right now that I'm gonna be covering next week. But as far as that is concerned, you know, I'm not gonna age that gracefully. But as far as the thing that gets me is, like, I want to be that grandmother that can walk up the bleachers to see my kids. I want to be the grandmother that is out there, you know, playing with the kids in the yard, and so, or a great grandmother, actually. So that's the thing that I always think about.
Isn't
is
it
like,
interesting? Your goals change in the season. Like in your 20s, you might be working out because you want to fit certain jeans and you want to wear certain clothes. In your 30s, it's another. And then in your 40s, you start thinking, actually, I want to make sure my knees still work at 50. I want to make sure that I can sit up straight at 60. You just start having different goals, which means the way you work out is probably going to change. What you eat is going to change because, you know, running might affect your joints differently in your 50s and 60s, and being willing to say, maybe I don't need to pound the pavement at a different decade of life can be hard for somebody that's been a runner their whole life to decide, I've got to do the bike now so my knees work when I'm 70, you know? So just making those modifications. Okay, so where are you in this culture that says you have to look a certain way, you have to be a certain weight, you've got to, you know, make sure that you fit into this tiny little profile of what beauty is. How do you navigate that? Especially because, just in case y'all didn't know, Miss Sadie here is quite a voice to the younger generation. There are a lot of people that are listening to you. I don't even know. Sometimes I look at your Twitter account and I'm like, does this girl really have, I don't know how many million, what do you have going on your Twitter account? How many followers are on your Twitter account?
Twitter, 2 million. So yeah, kind of.
So there are 2 million people, a lot of them I would say would be young ladies, that are just listening in, and they're watching to see what your clothing line is going to be like. I mean, I'm thinking of the message of modesty you send every time you create a new garment that people are going to be buying. That's a message of modesty you're sending. They're watching your images that you put out of yourself. They're looking at you, and whether you like it or not, girl, you are guiding a lot of young ladies. So how are you navigating the pressure of this culture that says you've got to kind of look a certain way to be beautiful?
Yeah, I've been very honest and vocal and open about my struggle with that. And I think, too, just to say what they've been and something that I've been keeping into perspective lately, and Mom said it the other day. I said something about Mom. I was like, Mom, you just look great, you know, because she was talking about working out and all this stuff. And I said, I mean, compared to everybody else your age, something like that. And she said, well, I'm not comparing myself. She said, I just want to be good for me and healthy for me. And I thought that was really cool. And even how they talk about Mama Jo, I think when you think about just yourself and you think about like the health aspect of yourself, and then I look at them and I think, oh my gosh, I love the way they're aging. Like, I think that they're beautiful. And even Mama Jo, like we all love Mama Jo's like arms. We love how she ages. We love her wrinkles. Like everything about her we just love. And so you think about other people's perspective. Nobody's thinking, oh man, you know, you got a few more wrinkles. I'm like, I love your wrinkles. You're my grandma, you know? So keeping that into perspective, I think that helps them age, seeing her like that, and even seeing me where they are, that they just want to be healthy, and they have this perspective that it's not about the way you look, it's about the way you feel and what you give to the world. But that's not easy. That's a lot easier said than done.
Yeah.
And for me, I've talked a lot about it because when I was out in the modeling world for a minute and doing Dancing with the Stars and stuff like that, I totally fell under that pressure of
Did you?
have to fit a certain size and look a certain way, and that size is impossible to reach unless you're on Dancing with the Stars and dancing 10 hours a day. The minute you're done with that, well, you're not going to look like that anymore.
And I like nachos too much.
Yeah,
for
me
that.
too. That's what I'm saying. You choose between being
never
too
worked for
skinny
me.
and queso, you're going to choose queso. It's just
Yeah.
going to happen. So for me, yeah, that was hard. But I feel like a lot of people, the reason why they just they stress out so much is because we feel like less than the standard that the world set. Because you actually can never be that because it's not even real.
It's not
and
real,
it's
yeah.
normally filtered and it's normally cropped, or it comes with, honestly, some kind of unhealthy eating habit. And for me, that's what it fell under. And I realized something so important that really rocked my world is that I am never going to measure up to the standard that the world set. I will always end up less than. But when I understand, I was actually never called to belong to the world. I'm called to belong to a kingdom that my Father made for me to enter, that he invited me into. For me, it's like you will never end up less than. You will always end up to be exactly how he handcrafted you to be. And the more I dwell on being less than, the less voice I have, the more impact I have. You hide under shame, you hide under fear, insecurity, doubt. But the minute you step into belonging to the kingdom of God, oh, goodness.
Yeah.
Get to going, girl. Like, you'll be confident, not because of what you look like or who you are, but because who he is in you radiates off of you. And I hate this about that season of my life whenever I was hiding under that insecurity and that body shame and all that stuff, because I'll tell them, I don't remember so many things that happened, and I don't remember it because I was so focused on myself and thinking about my own problems that I missed everything around me. And praise God that I'm out of that mind game now, that I can see the world around me. The less impact you have when you're thinking about yourself, you know? And Mom told me, she was like, if you think everybody's looking at you, you're thinking about yourself way too much. And I remember she said that back then, and I was like, you are so right.
And my mom said that to me when I was about 13 years old. I remember, I'll never forget this. We were on a road trip, and I had not, brushed my hair or done anything. We'd gotten up early, and we stopped at the gas station. I didn't want to go in because I was like, oh, I'll look bad. And she was like, if you think people are looking at you, you're thinking way too much about yourself. And I was like, whoa, thank you. And so it hit me, and it changed for me. I was like, you know what? I am thinking too much about myself. Like everybody else is not thinking, they're not looking at me.
Yeah.
They've got their own problems to worry about. Yeah. And so, I did try to instill that in our kids as well.
Do you listen to her and just go, oh my God?
Yes. I was thinking about when she was telling this, I'll watch her YouTube videos like, oh my goodness, where's this girl coming from? Yes. But the other day she said something, you were talking about feeling worthless, and you said, we're not worthless, but the way we are living is worth less than the calling that God has for us. The things that we're doing is worth less than who we are meant to be and what we are called to do. And I was like, whoa, girl, I don't know where that came from, but that was good.
That was you were talking about the other day at Passion, you said, go reread Ephesians. So I went and reread Ephesians. And there's this part, I was reading the Amplified version, and chapter 4, I believe, maybe it was right after, no, I think it's chapter 5, and it talks about how we're not to be involved with anything of the dark world, anything that is sin and like that, but then it goes, anything that is worthless to the calling that he has on the Amplified version. I said, yeah, so many of us, we take on the word worthless and we think, we are worthless because we're living in this insecurity, this sin, whatever it is, but it's never that you were worthless. It's that what you are participating in this sin, in this dark realm, is worth less than what God has for you. And when we fall under it, when we take on that word, you take on that shame. But when you say, no, this sin, this doubt, this self, no, that's got to go because that's worth less. And that's whenever you fall under that thing that you're talking about, of that pressure to fit this certain size. Like, it's just a scheme.
There you go. That's right.
Enemy. That's so great. You guys have been such a blessing to us. The very first time that I met Corey was actually fairly recently. It was just a couple of months ago, or not even, maybe 2 months ago or so. And we met each other, and we just kind of walked up to each other and hugged each other like we'd known each other for a very long time. I think our paths had sort of almost crossed a few times, and maybe on Twitter or something we'd talked to each other a little bit. But I hugged you, And I don't remember exactly what I said to you before, you know, our short time together was over, but it was something in and around what I want to say to you now and what I want to also say to you. I feel like I'm about to cry. That's perimenopause when I want to cry. But it's thank you. It's thank you, because I listened to your girl here, you know, talking and praising God and uttering things that have been spoken over her by the generations that have come before. And what it does for someone like me who is, we're very close to the same age, but what it does for someone like me who's got teenagers in her house, who's got people that she's still raising, having a little anxiety of whether or not I'm doing this right, what looking at this example says is just be faithful.
Yeah.
Just do the next thing. Just honor God as best you can. And then trust that He's got your back. And when you see a young lady like this who's filled up to overflowing with God's word, I mean, seriously, it just encourages us, and it makes us grateful. We're so grateful that God has given you the platform that He's given you, because there are so many millions upon millions that are being encouraged and whose lives are being changed just by your example. So thank you for living your lives out loud. We're so grateful. I wanted to tell you that if you do not have your hands on this book, you need to get your hands on this book. This is Live Fearless, a call to power, passion, and purpose. Just a little bit of that wisdom was over here a few minutes ago, but she's poured it all out into this incredible book. Sadie, we're so proud of you.
Thank you so much.
I'm so proud of you, girl.
That really means a lot.
I'm so proud of you, and I'm so excited about all the people who are going to hear your voice on the platforms that you take, the messages that you write, the blog posts that you post, the tweets that you tweet, the clothes that you create, everything that you put your hands to do. We're asking God to give you favor and blessing and prosperity and abundance, that his anointing would be on everything, and that it won't be about the clothes, it won't be about the jewelry, but that people will be drawn to the name of Jesus Christ as you lift it up higher and higher. Come on, y'all, let's thank them for being on the stage.